Good morning, and thank you all for coming. The members of Operation Tomahawk and I have had the privilege of putting together this assembly in honor of Veterans Day this Sunday. I've been asked by many people what Operation Tomahawk does. Our goal is to help veterans and all other service members through volunteering and fundraising. We've been selling t-shirts, and we currently are outside. We placed wreaths on veterans' graves and hosted several pizza nights for homeless veterans at Veterans Inc. in Worcester. And just recently, we sent a $1,000 check to the charity Mission 22. We all take great pride in what we've been able to do over the past year, and it leaves us excited for the year to come. I ask you now to please rise for the national anthem sung by the Algonquin Chorus, Aaron Blake, Zoe Devine, Steph Kalinowski, and Alyssa Watson.
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Thank you to them. That was very well sung. Now, it's no secret that everyone enjoys 3-day weekends. A day off from school or work is always appreciated. This sometimes leads us to forget the reasoning behind the day off. This Sunday, November 11th, we observe Veterans Day. On the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918, the fighting of one of the world's most catastrophic wars came to an official end, World War I. Approximately 4 million U.S. men and women fought in this war, resulting in approximately 116,000 deaths. This war was fought for the greater good, the good of every country on this planet. Congress eventually deemed November 11th as Armistice Day, in order to honor veterans of World War I. In 1954, Armistice Day was changed to Veterans Day in order to honor all American veterans. They're also the reason we are able to assemble here today. Veterans come from all walks of life, all classes, all races, from all across the country. Approximately 1% of the United States population has served or is serving in the United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine Corps, or Coast Guard. These men and women have deployed across the world for months or even years at a time, fighting our nation's wars and keeping this country safe. Even with this small percentage, every American's life has been touched by the years of service our veterans have given for us. Most of us have family members, friends, neighbors, that are veterans. We owe our freedoms to them, and they deserve our sincerest thanks. Veterans deserve to hear thank you every day, even if it means that we have to go out of our way to say it. This weekend, I ask of you to thank at least one veteran, or even spark up a conversation about their service. Sometimes this could be exactly what they need and make their day that much better. We also need to realize the struggles that families of veterans go through. Mothers may go a year without seeing their child. Children may not see their mother or father for months at a time. And wives and husbands not being able to talk to their significant other for weeks. This is often painful and incredibly challenging. Most of these families, although the difficulty, add to the strength of their service member and create a deeper bond. Veterans today may face some problems. The well-known ones are homelessness, being unemployed, PTSD, and suffering from disabilities. But what if I told you more veterans are dying on the home front from suicide than all the conflicts the United States is currently involved in? We are currently fighting a war against veteran suicide. We are all losing. According to a Department of Veteran Affairs study, 22 veterans commit suicide every day. 22 men and women that went through unspeakable things in order to provide us with freedom. To me, that's heartbreaking. In Operation Tomahawk, this is one of the main issues we focus on. As an ambassador for the organization, Mission 22, I find this problem to be relatively unknown. The least we can do is make every effort to understand and support those who we send to fight on our nation's behalf. The question that plagues our society is, how can we do this? We can start by getting rid of the negative connotations surrounding the issues some veterans may face. The words disorder and disabled are part of this negative stigma. Many veterans diagnosed with either a disorder or disability are some of the greatest contributors to our society. Through these things, we must remember, veterans are often some of the most loyal, capable, and determined men and women of our generation. They are willing to do almost anything for those in need, yet often have trouble asking for help when they need it. We all have the social obligation to preserve those who have sacrificed for us. We all have the social obligation to understand and contribute in a positive way to their return to a society that they would clearly give anything for. We all have the social obligation to care. Being there as someone to talk to or making donation to organizations such as Mission 22 that are devoted to solving this crisis are good places to start. If you remember one thing from what I have said today, remember this: 22 veterans commit suicide every day. In October of 2019, I will be an infantryman in the United States Army. My job description is as follows. Infantry is the main land combat force and backbone of the Army. They're responsible for defending our country against any threat by land, as well as capturing, destroying, and repelling enemy ground forces. I am honored to be able to say that, and I'm excited for the time to come. I, along with Tony Masalia, frequently get asked the one-word question: why? We all attend a highly academic school that has the sole purpose of preparing students for success in college. People from Algonquin have gone to multitudes of colleges, from community college to Ivy Leagues. Why then would I decide to disregard this opportunity? There's no simple answer to that question. Almost every student in this room will be attending a college in the upcoming years. I understand the importance of that, and the importance college means to all of you. This being so, I hope my service will allow each and every one of you to go to the school of your dreams and live the life you desire with the freedoms I promise you I will protect. My passion for the military has been with me my whole life. Along with this, so has my intense patriotism. My family history is rich with military. All of my mom's 3 brothers served in the United States Army. One of them was an Army Ranger and a Navy SEAL. Also, throughout my life, I have observed the way my father acted, from how we watched my brother's soccer games to him playing taps every Memorial Day. A United States Marine of 15 years, my father has shown me what it means to serve your country, not for yourself, but for the love of the country as a whole. One of the reasons I joined the United States Army is to become a man similar to that of my father. And my mom and dad are both here today. I owe my parents everything. My mom has been having a difficult time with what I am doing, as any mother would. But she is the strongest woman in my life, and she knows what's best for me. Their continuous support has led me to be able to do what I want to do. I'm forever grateful for it, and I thank you two very much. As I continue, the American way of life is one we all know and love. However, the way we live is never guaranteed. Without constant protection, a way of life could be extinguished. It's guarded at all hours, no matter the location, the weather, the holiday, or the price, by the United States military. This was ever present on September 11, 2001, when the Twin Towers and the Pentagon were attacked, along with Flight 93 going down. Every year since I was born, I have had to watch the videos of these events happening. Every year I've thought to myself, never again. The terrors of this day led to our fight against terrorism, a fight that I will happily join. If our generation does not continue to grant the average American the protection they deserve, the American way of life will cease to exist. This being so, if I ever have children in the future, I want them to be able to live in peace, and for this I am willing to do anything. Of course, I also want to jump out of planes and do everything else an infantryman does, because to me there's nothing more fun and nothing as rewarding. Now, Nathan Hale was an American soldier and spy during the Revolutionary War. He eventually was captured, and before being hanged by the British, he stated, "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." This patriotism is the same that I share, along with Tony Masalia, here to give his reasoning behind enlisting in the United States Army as a behavioral health specialist. Thank you, and remember to thank a veteran this weekend.
Thank you, Alan. Good morning, everyone. Like Alan has said, I have recently enlisted in the United States Army. This decision I have made has led to many questions as to why this is the path I have chosen to follow. To plead a proper response to this question, I cannot give one simple answer, for there are many reasons. In order to answer this question accurately, I must go back to the beginning. Back when I was a young boy who did not yet know the true meaning of patriotism, nor did I understand the evils that plague mankind. What I had then was not the perception of the real world. Instead, I had the insight gifted from my grandfather, who was a field medic in Vietnam. For every story he told me, the more I learned of the sacrifices he made for those who only knew him as a stranger. And for each of those stories he told me, the more I felt inclined to follow his true path of American valor. It was because of this early influence I had finally learned the true definition of patriotism. The word is defined: vigorous love and support for one's country. It is ironic in terms of the timing that I learned this definition, because it was not soon after that I had been exposed to what evil truly looks like. For the first time in my life, I had witnessed the terrors of 9/11. To this day, I still get the chills every time I see those planes crash into the towers, or the dirt of Pennsylvania, or the Pentagon. But for the first time I saw this, I could only watch in awe. The History Channel documentary I was watching then shifted its focus to the carnage that followed the collapse of the towers. I expected to see sadness and confusion amongst the citizens and officials, but to my surprise, I witnessed much more than that. I saw not sadness, nor did I see confusion, but I witnessed unity. Men and women working together in harmony as they dug through the rubble of what was the towers, risking their own health for the well-being of others. Setting aside their differences, they worked as one American body. And at the end of the pain and mourning, a flag was raised on the rubble to remind the entirety of the world that America and its people will not falter after a sucker punch, but instead grow stronger. 9/11 acted as a real eye-opener for me, as I witnessed fearlessness and nobility from everyday citizens, and I aspired to possess the heroism they have showed that we all have inside. As the years carried on, I had grown up within an America at war. A war that cannot be defined, but had a clear enemy. We were, and still are, at war against terrorists, whose goal is to destroy our way of life and our most sacred beliefs. Every time I would turn on the TV or read an article online, there would always be a story on the conflict raging overseas, and at the end of each story, there would be a count of the deaths that climbed every single day of the brave men and women who have sacrificed their lives for ours. We are strangers to them, yet they were willing to lay down their lives for us. Thinking about that, a flow of emotion overcame me, and at that moment, I had a realization that led me to understand my path. This realization was this sudden, innate feeling that I must protect people who cannot protect themselves, regardless of what name they all call God. I felt as though it was my responsibility, as a human being, to potentially sacrifice myself for the good of mankind. I then realized I must tell my parents of this epiphany. I was more than excited to share this news with them, hoping they would feel the same way. My enthusiasm was short-lived, however, as I did not get the reaction that I wanted. Instead, I got the reaction from a pair of parents whose only child just told them that he's joining the Army. But at any rate, we sat and talked for a long while about this decision I had made. They continuously battered me with questions, and I gave them continuous answers pertaining to my need to protect a countless number of times. My mother then asked me what would happen if I were to lose a limb, or several, or what if I were to come home with PTSD. She seemed very distraught and concerned. I had not thought of this possibility before, and this possibility shocked me. After a few moments, I ended up telling her this: Mom, families are being destroyed and men are dying, as well as women and children. I must attempt to crush this evil at all costs, even if it means I come home injured or hurt. But no matter what happens to me, God willing, we will climb over any mountain that comes our way, together. She solemnly accepted this answer and understood that I must do what I need to do. There is a quote that came from an unknown source that gives me motivation for the future that lies ahead, and it reads, "Dear child, evil will come for you, and when it does, run to the men carrying the weak and crushing the vile, for there are safety beside these lions. I aspire to be one of those lions." Thank you.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of gray, for purple mountain majesties above the fruited plain. America, America, God shed His grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, and sea to shining sea. Oh, beautiful for heroes proved in liberating strife, who more than self their country loved, and mercy more than life. America, America, may God thy gold refine, till all success be nobleness, and every gain divine.
Now we have the privilege of welcoming Mr. Steve Wynot.
Good morning. Wow, tough act to follow after these two young men. I'm not sure what I can say is going to have an impact any more than what these two gentlemen said. So, first off, I want to congratulate them for their decisions and their families for their support. This country is better and will be better because of young men or young women like that. So, congratulations, gentlemen. So I'm not sure how to follow, but I'm gonna flow with it. Again, my name's Steve Wynot. I live over here in Southborough. little history. I was what they call a ward of the state. I was a foster kid. I bounced around to 5 different foster homes, so I never really settled down with a solid strength of parents and family behind me. So in my senior year of high school, 2 of my buddies weren't in class that one day. Where'd you guys been? We joined the Navy. Dang, I want to join too. Had no idea, no clue, no foresight of what I was going to do after I got out of high school. So I took the opportunity, went down to the recruiter, said I want to be an electrician. He stuck a piece of paper in front of me, said, sure, sign right here. My first lesson. They went in a few weeks before me, out of a class of 106 from Hopkinton in 1969, which was, if you don't know, we were in the throes of a conflict. Back then, we didn't call it the Vietnam War, it's the conflict. 106 class members and 18 of us joined the military between the different branches. I chose the Navy, went to Great Lakes, Wisconsin, in the middle of winter. If you young men and women think it's cold here in the winter, head up to Great Lakes, Illinois. It is cold. I survived it. I went to it after graduating from Great Lakes. I went to Newport, Rhode Island, become what they call a storekeeper. When they give you your orders, they put on the wall in the barracks where you're going to go. I saw storekeeper. I said, I don't want to be that. I look in the book, the Bible of a naval sailor, storekeeper, accounting, logistics, supplies, inventory control. I don't want to be doing that. And then my buddy says, it's in Newport, Rhode Island. Ah, it's only 2 hours from home. Okay. So off I went to storekeeper school. Finished that, spent the next 3 years aboard ships. I took 1 ship into the Mediterranean. Went to different ports, Spain, France, Greece. I hated ancient history because I couldn't pronounce the names of the people, the names of the cities. And here I am, a year and a half out of high school, and I'm standing in front of the Parthenon. I'm standing in front of the Colosseum. I'm standing in the hills of Turkey where the Roman gladiators and stuff were. It's like, wow, there's a lesson. I was only 18. My ship got decommissioned, went to another one, and I wound up off the coast of South Vietnam, up in an area called Quang Tri. We spent time on the gun line. I wound up doing around the world. We left there, wound up doing a round the world cruise. So at 19 years old, I've left Newport, Rhode Island, gone through the Panama Canal, gone over to Guam, Hawaii, the Philippines, Vietnam, into the Gulf, the Persian Gulf. Back then, it was not what it is today. Down around Africa, back home in 6 months. Pretty neat thing on a gray, I call it a gray cruise liner. We spent a lot of money to get that trip today. Got out of the Navy, decided to go to work, but then I still had that itch, still had to do something. So I joined the Coast Guard Reserve. I spent 13 years in the Coast Guard Reserve, mostly out of the base in Boston. But I was able to also, my last couple of years there, I was stationed down at the Canal Station, Cape Cod, Baden Sandwich. I was lucky to be involved in at least one rescue while I was down there, and I shared that with some of the youngsters here earlier today. I got the itch back for the Navy. In my time, my work life, I also had joined the reserves, and I had become interested as a volunteer down a place, I think maybe some of the scouts, or some of you have been to Battleship Cove down there in Fall River, Massachusetts. And there were 3, 4 ships down there. I got the volunteer down there, so I got that itch again to go back into Naval Reserve. So I spent another 7 years in Naval Reserve and then retired in 1994. Upon my retirement, I was awarded the Navy Achievement Medal, and that was for my time. The wife used to wonder why I was always on the phone, why I was always doing extra drills, why I was always doing this, doing that. It was because those guys were my shipmates, my crewmates. I was one of the senior guys. I was going to help them get through. And when I retired, that was my reward for that work I had done. It's the most meaningful award I've received. It's this little green one here. They don't give them to you for just showing up for a drill. They don't give them to you just for, being in uniform. They give them to you for working and making a difference. And as I look out in this crowd of young students, you guys are going to make the difference. Young men and young women are going to make the difference in this world. I applaud you for that. The opportunities that you have, you're thinking about your future. Like I said, I was 17 years old. I didn't have a clue what I was going to do. I made that decision on a whim. Buzzy and Jimmy are going in the Navy. Geez, I'll go in too. And here it is, some 45 years later. I still have that passion. If they called me up tomorrow, I'd be gone in a heartbeat. My wife knows that. My kids know that. Today, my granddaughter's down in D.C. with the kids from Trotter, and she's going to visit those memorials. That means so much to me. I continue to serve. I try to serve the community the best I can. I'm the VFW coordinator, VFW commander in Southborough, small post now. But the men that were in the post when I started, we started with about 50, we're down to about 17. They were all World War II and Korea veterans. And those men from World War II, the greatest generation, they left high school at your age and went to fight in a war that saved this world. Read your World War II history and you will see that had they not taken up arms, if they had not gone overseas, if they had not done what they needed to do, this world, as tough as it is now, would be a whole lot tougher, believe me. That's why, to me, my biggest heroes are those guys. I'll share some with you. Bob Greening. Bob Greening was 19 years old, serving on a destroyer out of Pearl Harbor. They were not at Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. But Bob pulled in to Pearl Harbor December 8th, 1941. And he never spoke an awful lot, but when he spoke, we listened. Us volunteers that used to be down at Battleship Cove, we would listen. And Bob would tell us what it was like for him to go back in, to pull into Pearl, and to see his Navy, his ships sunk. Sailors that had been killed still floating in the water because they hadn't been recovered yet. The smell of the oil burning. Bobby's one of my heroes. Paul Phipps. Paul Phipps Insurance Company. He founded that when he returned from his service in World War II. Paul was a lieutenant in communications, and he landed on a place called Iwo Jima. He was one of 7 residents from Hopkinton that served at Iwo Jima at the same time. Now, back then, Hopkinton was only a town of maybe 3,000 or 4,000, so you think of that, 7 served at the same time. I think about Arthur Butler. Mr. Butler is 96 or 97 at this time. He lives, still living in Westboro. Mr. Butler was on Okinawa in 1945 in a foxhole with his buddy in the rain, and they saw something move. They saw a hand go up, and they saw something come out of his hand. They opened fire. They took out the soldier that had thrown a grenade into their foxhole. Mr. Butler was wounded. He's a Purple Heart recipient. Mr. Butler is one of my heroes. Dick Varney, also from Southborough. He flew 40 plus missions over Korea during the Korean conflict, the Korean War. The police action, they called it. Believe you me, if somebody's firing back at you, it's not a police action, it's a war. He flew over 40 missions in a B-29 as a photo intelligence. He's one of my heroes. I was fortunate this past year, to assist Mr. Varney in being able to fly down to Washington, D.C. through a program called Honor Flight, where they fly World War II and Korean veterans for free. They fly them down for the day, give them the opportunity to visit the memorials that they earned. And believe me, those men earned them. Wes Gregory, he's not much younger than I am, not a little bit younger. He gave up a business. He struggled, his business struggled because he gave up his time and did 2 tours in Gulf 1 and Gulf 2. He's returned, he works hard at his business. He continues to give back to his community. Russ is one of my heroes. I'm going to throw some numbers at you. 39 Whiskey 46, 18 Echo 22, 47 Whiskey 30. Those are the panel numbers and row numbers on the Vietnam Memorial. .39 Whiskey 48, panel 39 West, line 48. You'll find the name. Always gets me. Bob Foley from Southborough. Bob was only 20 years old. He was less than 3 weeks from coming home. And he was killed along with his 3 crewmates, Bob Barron, Cliff Newman, and Gary Graves. They were 20, 19, and 20 years old. Northborough gave 2 of their sons, Neil Ellsworth. Neil was in country for 6 weeks when he lost his life. He's at panel 18E, row 22. Neil was 19 years old. And Dave McAfee, he was in country 3 weeks when he lost his life. He's at panel 47 West, row 30. These are my heroes and the 58,000 others whose names are etched on that wall in DC. I'm sure a lot of you know Brian Arsenault. who this town lost just a few years ago. September 4th, 2014, in Afghanistan. I think of the men and the women on the USS Cole, 17 of them sitting on the mess decks, which we call the cafeteria, when the terrorists ran a boat up against the side of this ship and exploded it. 17 young men and women like yourself, like me, that were there to do a job, didn't expect what was going to happen. They say you expect the unexpected, but sometimes you just can't. Last year, I lost another 27 sailors. I call them shipmates. Any man or woman who serves in the United States Navy, I call a shipmate. I don't have to know them. 7 were lost on the USS Fitzgerald, another 10 on the USS McCain. Peacetime. In a big ocean, collisions with some ships. Those guys are my heroes. This is the greatest country in the world, but it takes men and women, like some of these names I just spoke of, to keep this country great. Do we have problems in this country? Pardon the expression, but you bet your ass we do. But they can be resolved. Blacks can live with whites, whites can live with Hispanics. We can all live together. We work together. Being in the Navy, when you're on board a ship, and there's a couple of hundred, maybe 300 of you, you depend on each other. And you don't care what their religion is, you don't care what color they are, you don't care you care because they got your six, they got your backside. If something happens, they are there. You work as a team. And you work to make the ship great. You work to bring that ship home and everybody home to their families. Those are the lessons, some of the lessons that I learned in my career as a Navy. I did a total of 24 years. Again, I go back in a heartbeat if I could. But even though that's past me, I still try to give something back to the community. A little bit. As they say, one brick doesn't make a building, the bricks together. I do a little bit, somebody else does a little bit. It's built. You young men and young women here have a great opportunity in this country to do good, to take this country and make it, and I'm not politicizing this, believe me, make it great. It is a great country. If you've gone to some of the countries that I had back in my time, in some of the countries of the world today, you'll see exactly how this country is. And you'll appreciate what you have, what you can do, the freedoms that you have because of some of the names I just shared with you, and because of the sacrifices and the determination that, like these two young gentlemen today are going to do, they're going to join. I also met another youngster up there, I'm sorry I forget your name, he's going to the Coast Guard. So, take the opportunity, take the gift that you have, do something with it. Many of you have seen the movie Saving Private Ryan. One of the most touching pieces of that movie was when a character, Ryan, standing before the gravestone, asked the question, did I earn it? Did he earn the life that he had? Because others before him had sacrificed. All right, ladies and gentlemen, get out there and do your best.
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies to the oceans, what could fall? God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home.
Now we would like to welcome Junior Olivia Laney.
With Veterans Day approaching, I've been doing a lot of thinking about my experiences with veterans and the impact they have had on my own life. There are 3 experiences that stand out the most to me. The first one is at BJ's a few weeks ago. I was going grocery shopping with my mom when I noticed a little old man with a Vietnam veteran hat on. I walked up to him and thanked him for his service. He shook my hand and said thank you and that he really appreciates me coming up and saying that. There was a hint of surprise in his voice that made it seem like I was only one of few people that has ever done that to him. I stopped and thought about how sad that was. Thank you should be something that he is used to hearing, but it isn't, because people don't take that 30 seconds to thank somebody that fought for their freedom. A thank you seems small. These men and women just put their lives on the line for us, and yet the majority of us won't give up 30 seconds of our time to acknowledge it. Another great experience was when I got to speak at the Brian Arsenal Memorial Motorcycle Ride. Every September, the Arsenals hold a memorial motorcycle ride throughout the area to honor Brian's life. 2 weeks before the ride, I started a fundraiser at my dad's automotive repair shop. I left a little bucket full of plastic toy soldiers. Next to the bucket, I put a sign that read, "Please take a soldier home and place it somewhere that will remind you to pray for those who serve our country." All the donations I received went to the Brian Arsenal Memorial Foundation. A picture of my fundraiser was put up on the Lame Automotive Facebook page where Brian Arsenal's family later came across it. Later that week, Lindsay Arsenal, Brian's sister, called me and asked if I would like to set up the same fundraiser at Brian's Memorial Ride and come up with a speech on why I decided to do this fundraiser. I said yes immediately. On Saturday of September 22nd this year, I made my way over to the Vincent F. Picard American Legion, where the ride would start and end. When I got there, I set up my station and was introduced to Brian's family. They hugged me right away. As everybody started to show up, I was able to talk to some incredible people. At 11 o'clock, Lindsay, Mr. and Mrs. Arsenal, and I walked up to where we would all speak. I hadn't been nervous the whole time, which was weird because usually I would be. But when I got up there, I realized how comfortable they all made me feel, and that getting up there and staring out at all 100 veterans made me feel so lucky to be able to let all of these people know how much I appreciate them and to thank them for everything they have done for this country. I brought up Mission 22 in my speech, explaining what it was, which Alan also did, and a quote that usually comes to mind when hearing about Mission 22 is, "They were there when we needed them, let's be there when they need us." And I think that's something that we should keep in mind. In January of this year, on a single night, a total of 37,800 veterans were experiencing homelessness, and 23,300 of those veterans were unsheltered or living on the streets. Why are the men and women that have fought for us and given us our freedom to live our lives, to have houses and food, left with no house or food. How is that fair? Our first priority should be to help our veterans since they sacrificed for us. Another event I got to experience was a pizza night at Veterans Inc. All of Operation Tomahawk's members got to host dinner at the Veteran Shelter in Worcester. After we served dinner to all of them, we were able to go around and talk to them. All the girls ended up sitting at this one table with a veteran that was introduced to us. He showed us his whole life, from all his children, nieces, and nephews, to everywhere he has traveled. I could tell he just loves sharing all the stuff about himself and that he doesn't get to do it often. When the veteran we talked to left, we all joined the boys who were talking with a group of 3 veterans. It was a great experience, one that I will never forget. This Veterans Day, let's remember to thank those who served. Thank them for their selflessness, sacrifice, and bravery, and for the part they played in our freedom. We are a better, stronger nation because of them. Most of us go every day without thinking of the men and women that give us all of our freedom we have, because we have never known life without it. We have been incredibly lucky to grow up and live in a place where we are free to express ourselves and create our own path. Despite what your political views are, the men and women in our military have protected and continue to protect your right to express them. In other countries, you are not allowed to show any opposition to government leaders and officials. Can you imagine a life without that freedom? Try to do it, it's difficult. Our military is made up of men and women willing to give their lives because they believe in that freedom. They believe in you and me and our country. They believe in something bigger than themselves. So when you see someone that has served or is currently serving, take a moment, acknowledge them. This could be by thanking them or simply by stopping and remembering those we have lost and those that are currently away from their families in safety fighting. Because you are in the presence of something bigger than you, and if you enjoy any of that freedom you have and experience, you owe it to them. On Sunday morning, November 11th, Southborough will honor its veterans at the War Memorial by the library. This ceremony starts around 11 o'clock. Usually there are around 30 or 40 people there. Wouldn't it be great if there were much more? Thank you.